Hey guys, this is Shay with 1010s Motorsports, and behind me is our new build, a 350Z drift car. And not just any drift car, but what we hope to be a reliable drift car. Now, why did we choose the 350Z? Well, there's a lot of reasons. One of them is they're plentiful. There's a lot of them. They become a lot more affordable these days. You can pick them up for pretty cheap. Some as low as $3,000 for depending on what model you're looking for. Others, like this one, which is a little preferable in some cases, more towards the $4,000 to $6,000 depending on the condition. One of the more difficult aspects to making a drift car is not only just reliability, finding aftermarket parts that aren't going to break the bank. 350Z has been around for a long time, so there's a ton of aftermarket support. You can find tons of parts by major manufacturers. And because the chassis is a little older, they're pretty cheap. And third, possibly the biggest reason why, is that right out of the box, these 350Zs are actually pretty capable to be a drift car. In fact, in my eyes, the most important thing about choosing a 350Z as a drift car is getting the cheapest possible one. One, because you're gonna be running into things, most likely, hopefully not walls, but chances are you're gonna be hitting a couple things. Second, is that these cars came with multiple differential options from the factory. They have a lot of different tiers that personally I still don't understand, between the Touring and the different weird names they came up with them, and the Grand Touring or whatever Touring, but for the most part, the base model comes with an open diff. And normally I would tell you to steer clear of that. But since what we're gonna be doing is welding it, the base model is the ideal option because it's the cheapest and it's the easiest to weld. All right, I'll just get it. There's kind of a problem in motorsports. Now, it's not necessarily motorsports itself, it's with us, the enthusiasts. And I'm guilty as charged. I love to build a car. Motor swaps, big brakes, blinged out wheels, I'm all about that stuff. However, when it comes to motorsports, the biggest mistake a lot of us make is not driving the car enough. I know plenty of people, and again, I'm guilty, of spending months and months, if not years, building a car, and then life gets in the way. Money's always an issue, or having the spare cash to complete your build, because obviously, doing these one-off motor swaps, you're chasing a part that you have no idea even exists, or you're building custom fittings, and all of that stuff doesn't come cheap. And then nonetheless, a year and a half down the line, you haven't even participated in one event yet. So the most important aspect in my eyes about building a car is making it reliable so you can get the maximum amount of seat time you can possibly get. Again, in motorsports, seat time is what matters. You can ask a lot of these guys that are out there drifting, they're barely hold together 350Zs, and they've had hours and hours behind that seat. And they're the ones out there getting the most seat time and the most experience, which in reality is the reason why we build these cars. So when we build this car, everything will be taken into consideration as far as reliability. How can we keep this thing drifting as long as possible and still make it affordable? That being said, a lot of our modifications are actually optional. Again, many people take these 350Z chassis, they weld the rear diff, they make some front steering angle adjustments, and they go out and party. But since that wouldn't be much of a build, we're gonna add a couple extras. Now, a little bit of background about me and drifting. Now, I've partaken in about I would almost call it half of a drift event. About 10 years ago, there was a skid pad and I was out there just doing a couple donuts, making a fool of myself. So since then, I've actually done no drifting other than the occasional spirited parking lot turn. So building a drift car and actually drifting is gonna be something new to me. So giving myself a challenge. I think it's always a good thing to set a date for your build. Try and make an event, that will at least allow you to pick a date and try and aim for it and get there. And if you fall short, at least you're much further than where you were before. Here in Albuquerque, we actually have a pretty active drift community. Every year there's a big drift event called No Coast. Play on word there, since we don't technically have a coast. I mean, we have Tingley Beach, but that's not a real beach. Now that event is August 30th, which gives us plenty of time to get this build completed, tested, and me taught how to drift. So if you want to learn how to build a reliable and affordable drift car, hit the bell button so you can be alerted to all of the episodes that are come. Let's go turn some wrenches. Okay, so step one of any build, in my opinion, is always checking the previous maintenance of the vehicle. You don't want to take a vehicle that you just purchased, have no idea what the oil level is, no idea when the last service was done, and go out and abuse it. Believe me, you're asking for a bad time. So we're going to go around our 350C drift car, and we're going to start with all of the things that we need to repair. Now, we kind of gave some shots before this of what condition the car was in, and I don't want it to be too confusing, because this, from 20 feet away, probably looks like a pretty nice car, and it is, but believe me, it's rough around the eyes in certain parts. So let's go ahead and talk about some of that stuff. Now, the person I bought this car for didn't give us a whole lot of details about what, the previous owner, maintenance, or any of that stuff, which is pretty much par for a $4,000 car. So at this point, after some thorough investigation, I think someone actually already drifted this car. So a couple of things, some giveaways are likely the large amount of rubber that is present on the tire wells. And you guys may not be able to see that, but for the most part. Second option is, as you guys see, this nice little, now this is an interesting thing because fender rollers, people love them, but honestly, yeah, I don't know anyone who's been able to roll fenders and not chip the paint. So maybe it's just me, but I don't believe it. I think it's fake. It's Fugazi. Doesn't exist. Anyway, all right, moving on to the second most obvious thing. Now, I personally don't like to buy used cars that have aftermarket wheels, just because a lot of people are going to want to get their money out of those wheels when they sell it. So when trying to purchase this car, I was hoping the guy would actually take the wheels off and provide a factory set, but it didn't work out. And this was the real reason why. Not because I don't particularly like them, which I don't, but at the same time, these wheels have been repaired, and have been repaired in a really terrible way. So let's see if I can figure this out. I think somehow, pretty sure someone was drifting this bad boy and might have hit a curb maybe once or twice, because here is our front wheel. I don't know if I can get a good shot of this for you guys, but I'll do my best. Supposed to be nice and round, and you can see some, oh, what's that? It's a little flat spot. Couple flat spots. And we're moving here to the back wheel. And this one's pretty prominent. You can actually see, oh, that doesn't look straight. It's not all that good. When I was examining this wheel, I took the bead off and found a whole lot of what looked like silicone wrapped around the bead of the wheel. So, and when I put the wheel back on, of course, when I put the tire back on the wheel, it didn't hold in the air. So that was kind of an interesting thing that people use. I've been told they use that trick on large semi trucks. So definitely wasn't fix a flat, but it basically means this wheel and tire combo it's done. I'm not going to use it. I'm not going to go drifting on a tire that is held on with silicone. So arguably in a drift car, the most important aspect when you're buying a used one is its running condition. Now, a couple of reasons why we bought this car. It's 2006, which is important. One reason why is because in 2006, the 350Z came with their new rev up motor. Now what that means is that not only does it have variable valve timing on the intake cams, it also has it on the exhaust cams, and produce 300 horsepower compared to the, I think, 285 or something like that from the previous models. Not like that's a huge advancement, but we'll take it. Secondly, this motor is actually in pretty good condition. Not a whole lot of leaking that we could find. This thing's been sitting for a couple of days. One of the most important aspects of buying a used car is, has it been modified before? And this one, however, has been modified, and it's been around the block a few times. It hasn't really been extensively modified to where I don't feel comfortable driving it. So, sure, the intake has a pretty sweet zip tie mod on it, but I'm told you need that to be a part of the drift community. So that I'll fit right in with. Secondly is the exhaust. Someone put a true dual, I don't know what it is. It's popular here for people to put true dual exhaust systems on their cars without an H or X pipe. I don't know. I'm not sure. I haven't caught on to it. If you guys know the answer, say in the comments. Let's get these wheels off and take a look at those brakes because they look pretty haggard. All right, two things. First one, these are garbage. I hate them. As you can see, they get stuck almost every time you want to actually use them. Chances are they're probably not designed to be used with an impact, but these are going in the garbage anyway. And two, these are probably the worst repaired wheels I've ever seen. Pretty much an accident. Pretty much an accident waiting to happen. So, these guys, these aren't even good enough for Craigslist. Maybe I'll put them on Facebook. Here we go. Now that we got the wheels off, we're able to get a really good view of the brakes and suspension. And the brakes, tons of heat were put into these brakes. They definitely need to be replaced. Yeah, so these brake rotors have a lot of stress fractures right around the drills of the brake rotor. One of the reasons why a lot of people do not recommend them for motorsports application. Because eventually they will crack. And crack kills, kids. These things are not happy. All right, one big thing to point out. That is a lot of grease to have at the bottom of your shock absorber. Pretty much whenever you see grease around the shock with no evidence of it coming from elsewhere, means your shock is toast. Once all the hydraulic fluid is out of it, it's no longer going to function properly. And it looks like every one of these, except for my back right one, needs to be replaced. Didn't really matter because we're going to get rid of them anyway. Now, the front suspension, this is the other reason why I believe this thing was drifted. Now, one of the parts we got made by GK Tech specifically prevents this from happening. And what I'm told is it happens on stock bushings, replacement bushings. It doesn't matter. Eventually, it's going to happen. Now, it's either that or they hit a curb, which I believe is a real possibility considering this arm looks nice and new compared to the rest of them. So, chances are this car has been in a few accidents. And this is the bushing in question. Right here. So what I'm told, this suspension, whenever altered for drifting purposes, articulates way further than what the manufacturer ever thought would be possible. This is what it should look like. And this is what ours looks like. Also, the shock absorbers, again, they're pretty toast. As you can see, they've seen much, much better days. Despite the front suspension having a couple of problems, overall, this car is in pretty healthy condition. Now, as we move towards the back, we have the typical rotted out rear diff bushing. This thing has definitely outlived its lifespan. And then finally, one of the last reasons why I believe this car may have been used for drifting is these aftermarket SPC arms. So, and there's one little tiny problem with the oil pressure sensor. Now, every time you turn the car on, it pegs out to like max pressure, which doesn't happen. So thankfully, we drove the car here and we didn't blow the thing apart. So I think it's probably just means it's either a faulty sensor or a faulty gauge. So we'll get to that as well. But beyond that stuff, really this car is in pretty decent shape. So should make for a perfect start to our drift car. All right, next, we're gonna remove these rotors, brake calipers, so we can get the caliper sent off to get blinged out a little bit. We're gonna send those out to get powder coated. The brake rotors are gonna be replaced with wave spec brake rotors. My buddy Mike should be here in the next couple hours and we're gonna go over that. Beyond that, once we get the suspension all torn apart, we got a bunch of bushings we're gonna replace. One of them being that rear diff bushing. After that, once all the bushings are done, we're gonna throw this stuff back together, get our new shocks back on, and begin doing alignment and some other stuff. So I'm super excited to finally be tearing this thing apart. So hope you guys enjoy.